good evening, and thanks for tuning in with us tonight. Tonight, we're here for a special Puppy Summit prep. We're trying to help you guys get familiar with your presenters and some of the topics that we're going to be talking about at the virtual Puppy Summit. Tonight, I'm joined with Nina from NonStop Dog Canine Training and Behavior. Nina, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, tonight, this is a topic that I think doesn't get talked about quite enough, and it's something that's really important. I think when people think about training their dog, they think, okay, well, I'm using positive reinforcement. I either use food or use a toy, and we give the dog the thing, and then it rewards the behavior. But there's so many little nuances that go into strategically using those reinforcers, and it can have a huge impact on how successful we are in our training program. So I'm really glad that we are talking about this and that you're going to dive into it more at Virtual Puppy Summit. For our viewers who might not, know you, know your face, know what you do you mind giving everybody a little brief introduction of you and your dog training company, and then the presentations that they can expect to see and hear from you at Virtual Puppy Summit?
Yes. Nina Russell and I own NonStop Dog, and we opened in 2015, fall of 2015. Before that, I've been working professionally as a trainer full time for almost 10 years. I do home visits and I do some boarding and day training, and I also do virtual visits. So I see a lot of puppies, and I see a lot of, herding breeds because I have herding breeds,
Mhm.
and, I do dog sports as well, so I do Schutzhund, which is tracking obedience and protection, and then a host of other things like disc and dock diving and all of that stuff. Um, I I like using sports to get people out with their dogs, people
Mhm.
that maybe didn't realize they didn't come to me for sports, they came to me for training. And I really enjoy getting them into some kind of sport, including now canicross, because I learned a lot from you. So that has been a great addition to the things that I can offer people, and they really love it.
Yeah, it's so important for people to get out with their dogs. And there's so many different sports that people can do, based on their fitness level, their dog's fitness level, their dog's interests. And I love that you are using sports to help get people more active with their dogs. That's really important. Now, you are going to be doing a couple presentations at Puppy Summit. Before we get started on tonight's talk, do you mind giving people a brief overview of the presentations that you'll be doing?
Absolutely. On Friday, November the 12th, from 3 to 4, I will be doing the presentation on how to reward your dog, where we'll go more in depth over kind of a few of the things that we'll talk about today. And then I'll be on the panel that night from 7 to 9 discussing how to build your village. So, how to create a good care team. And then on Sunday, yeah, Saturday, I'm doing cooperative care with fellow admin Carissa Carvel, and that is going to be at noon. And then Sunday, I'll be on the panel of being your puppy's advocate, and that is from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
I'm really excited for Puppy Summits and your presentations in particular. Two of them I actually was talking to clients about today because cooperative care is something that people often don't think about early on in their training program. And then they'll see dogs start to have trouble at the vet or have trouble with getting their nails trimmed. And for those things that are lifelong, where we're going to be doing it for the rest of their life, it's so important that the dog is comfortable with these procedures and that we can help them do that. And by focusing at a young age, it really makes that a lot easier for them.
Yes, and I think too, some of just like the basic stuff of living together gets
Mhm.
overlooked. I mean, things like getting dressed. Can you put a harness on your dog? Can you put the leash and collar on? And how nice is it if from the very beginning you teach them to assist you with that? They'll
Yeah.
get up on something, stand still, or put their head in a leash or put their head in a collar. And that's the foundation of cooperative care, right? It's just
Mhm.
a cooperative effort to get things done.
Yeah, I love that. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about reinforcement. And as I mentioned earlier when we started this, reinforcement is something that, again, if we think of positive reinforcement, we think, okay, my dog does something I like and I give him a treat. But there are so many different ways that we can deliver that treat, and how we use that food will directly impact whether or not we're reinforcing the behavior we think we are, right? And
Exactly.
it can make that training process a lot more clear because the dog knows exactly what to expect as their reinforcement, where they're going to be getting it. And we can even use reinforcement strategically to help prevent some problem behaviors like reactivity, which I know you're going to talk about both here tonight and in your Puppy Summit presentation. So before we kind of dive in, let's first start with a little bit of a definition. Can you kind of define what reinforcement is and what we're really talking about when we use that word?
Yes. So I'll probably use the word reward interchangeably, but reinforcement is something that um, increases behavior, right? So, and I think oftentimes what we think of as a reward may not actually be reinforcing, as you
Mhm.
talked about earlier. So, teaching a dog these reinforcement cues are the thing that help us make sure that what we're doing, the thing we're offering at the end, is actually helping maintain or build that behavior or maintain that association. Um, so, as far as what the reinforcement cue is, um, it's a stimulus and it's usually sound or a gesture. It's some a sound you make with your mouth or with a clicker, a mechanical device. It could be any kind of sound, really, a gesture, an object. So I'm going to focus mostly on the sounds that we make with our mouth. We think of as words. I think they're the easiest to carry around with us, and so that's kind of what I'll be focusing on. But it can be anything.
Yeah. And you might, depending on the training setup you're doing, you might use different reinforcement cues in order to kind of get other behaviors from your dog. So, what are some examples of these reinforcement cues?
So tonight I'm going to focus mostly on tossing or scattering with food. So a toss is a single piece of food that we throw. The dog gets to chase down. Scatter is like a handful of food scattered calmly on the ground. The two other most common ones that I use are come get food from my hand or I'm going to come deliver food to you. But we can also have different cues for toys, so get the toy out of my hand or I'm going to throw the toy. So those come in handy if you have a dog that likes to play fetch and really likes the toy. You go to throw it and they jump up and bite your hand or try and get the toy. So having some clarity there, especially when dogs are really excited, is very helpful with that too.
And these different reinforcement cues can certainly have different value for the dog as well. So not only is it making things a little bit more clear in training, but as a trainer, you could make certain choices to use certain reinforcement cues, based on the environment and how kind of exciting or rewarding you want to be for your dog.
Absolutely. So with toss and scatter, in general, toss is more exciting. The dog is we're using food almost like a toy, right? The dog is chasing down the food and eating it. And then how they respond after they eat it also gives us information. And it also puts the dog in a place that we want them. Scatter, the dog is sniffing and eating. That's generally a calming behavior for most dogs. So I can use that to again put the dog where I want them because if I do a scatter, I'm going to do it. My arms only reach so far, so the dog's going to have to come to that place and sniff and eat, um, and so I can use those tools to decide what's going to be most reinforcing to the dog, but also how do I want them to feel. How what kind of association do I want to form between these two things? So if I if I call my dog off of a squirrel and it's very exciting, if I just go, "Oh, here's a cookie," that's not necessarily the best association to build that kind of behavior, right?
Much less exciting than getting to chase the squirrel.
Right, yeah.
So you've got a video here that we're going to share. And when I get that up, if you want to kind of walk our viewers through what they are looking at.
So this is going to be, yes, the lab. So this is the lab, and we are working on just like manners. And this dog is very food motivated, but also very excitable. And so the reinforcement cues we're using here are I'm delivering food to him. I say nice. I say floor, and that means I'm going to put food calmly on the floor, just a piece. Because if I do a toss with him right now, he'll probably knock things off the shelf. It'll be really exciting for him. Hey, I'm going to come to you and give you food.
X.
And then as we approach the end of this aisle, I tell him to come back and get food from my hand. And we're going to repeat this
X.
because he wants to dart out of that aisle and he likes to run up to people.
X.
And so what I essentially do is create a dog who's going to wait because he's anticipating. I'm setting the expectation that when we get to the end of that aisle, you're going to come flying back to me for food on my hand. And so then on this next
Nice
rep,
job.
as we approach the end, he
Nice job.
pauses. He's expecting to come back, and I pay him in place, and then we go.
That's very good.
And that's the end. You can probably stop it because I'm just going to fawn over him a little bit at the end.
So that's really cool to see because you can see how not only were you still reinforcing those behaviors, but in the moment you were selecting specific reinforcement cues based on the behaviors that you wanted to get from the dog and wanted to reward. And you could see that at the end, he was then pausing at the end of that aisle, kind of waiting for you, expecting to be called back again. So
Correct.
those different reinforcement cues, some of them were more exciting than others, and you strategically chose which ones you wanted to use in that
Correct.
environment with him.
Yep. So, since I always want coming back to me to be really valuable, I like making the come get food from my hand cue fun. I want the dog to really like run back to me and kind of dive into my hand for food because I'm literally calling him to me, calling the dog to me, and I'm putting the dog at hand. So that puts me in a really good position when there's exciting stuff going on, that it's fun to run back to me for food. And like I said, he's a dog who's really excitable, easy to get excited, and really likes food. So if I were doing tosses with him, it'd be bouncing all over the floor, and that we might be knocking things over. But he doesn't need any more excitement versus a
Right.
dog who kind of stresses down or needs to be moved around a little bit more in order to relax. He needs to be more still. And
Mhm.
so I choose to deliver food or put food calmly on the ground. And then when I want him to come back to me from exciting things like, oh, there's a turn and possibly new things, I'm going to use something that means, hey, run back to me for food. And then use those things to create the behaviors I want because I'm creating expectations.
Now, these are things that people probably are doing somewhat already, but they might not realize that they are doing it, or they might not be maximizing the use of it because
Correct.
people will offer rewards directly to the dog, or sometimes drop the food to the ground, or sometimes throw it and catch it in the air. But it is better for your training program if you can be intentional with this.
Correct. Yeah. I really like having at least 2, maybe 4 different cues. Like, so they specifically tell the dog what to expect. And I like people to have that so that they can run through them and see and get information. Because essentially as you said, the reinforcement cue is going to happen anyway. It doesn't matter if you train it intentionally or not. If every time you say good dog, you then reach into your pocket, that becomes part of the pattern and your dog picks up on that. So, when I'm working with dogs, I like to know how they feel about different things. And it's very interesting that some dogs, if I say, come get food from my hand, they'll come in. But if I say, chase the food on the ground, they can't. Or vice versa. They can respond to chase the food on the ground, but they can't come back to me and get food. And some dogs, they'll take food if you bring it to them, but they can't leave where they are. They can't disconnect and disengage to come back to me. And that's really important. And so if you don't have those specific cues that tell the dog what to expect, then you might not know why your dog is not responding.
Yeah. And when we're training our dogs, obviously pattern is helpful. We use pattern and repetition all the time in training. It helps the dog figure things out, and it can even reduce some frustration that they're experiencing if they know what to expect. You mentioned kind of setting expectations for them, right? Those reinforcement
Correct.
cues, let the dog know what's going to happen. And that can be really helpful when we're trying to manage stress levels and
Yes.
frustrations in our dogs.
Yes.
So I assume that you will then kind of choose those reinforcement cues strategically as well to help
Yes.
prevent frustration.
Yes. And so that happens in two ways. One, it gives the person who's handling the dog less to think about. So if they have to think about, okay, cue the dog to sit, cue the dog to come, cue the dog to touch my hand, cue the dog to go to their place. That's a lot for a person who's in a exciting or stressful situation to think about. And then is the dog doing it correctly? Are they meeting criteria? If we can just break it down to the bare bones, can the dog come eat food from my hand? Can the dog chase a piece of food that I toss? So if we think about a situation that's really common, like the dog's really excited for greetings, they're mobbing people at the door when you come in. So if I say, for example, okay, dog, sit. Oh, good dog. And the dog really wants his preference is to go say hi. And then I go, oh, good dog, here's a cookie that I'm going to give you. And they're like, oh, but I really want to say hi. Or if I say, yes, do they get to get up? Do they get to get up and go to the person? Do they have to come back to me? So I think there's some gray area in expectation where the human doesn't know what they really expect. The person who's coming in the house, our guest, doesn't really know what to do or what to expect. It's a lot to explain. And the dog doesn't know what to expect. They got it right. Okay, they sat, they're paying attention. Now I get to go say hi. When I might say, oh, I know that you're not quite ready to go
Mhm.
say hi. I think you need to kind of contain yourself. So I might do a toss away from the person when you sit, and then do a toss away from the person again. And then just ask for you to acknowledge that I exist. I just wait for that moment and then do a scatter where the dog is sniffing and eating. Then I might send them in to say hi.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned with that example is asking the dog to move away from something that's exciting. And whether something is exciting or stressful, we often ask the dog if they can move away from it. And oftentimes, increasing space can help how they're feeling emotionally, because the closer they are to something that's exciting, the harder it is to contain themselves, right? And the closer they are to something that's scary, the harder it is for them to be calm and quiet and confident. So, how do you use your reinforcement cues to kind of help with fear and reactivity?
Um, so if we know what like engage and disengage is, where the dog is looking at something or they're engaged with something, and then we want them to disengage, the longer they stare at something, the longer that they're engaged with something, if they're ramping up, the more likely they are to not be able to respond up to us or to blow up, right? Or potentially move in and get closer than they need to be.
Right.
And so it's a little bit of reading body language, but you could also have like a general rule of thumb. And it's different from dog to dog. But like if a dog is staring for more than 5 seconds, it often doesn't hurt to interrupt that.
Hmm.
Right. And so if I just say, if I say toss and the dog can go chase food and eat it and then look back up at me, that's pretty good information that the dog is in a good headspace. If they can respond to a cue, eat food, then they can be in a good place to learn. But if I'm asking them for things and then trying to reward it, and they can't even respond to toss and eat, then I don't really have a good place to build or train behavior.
Hmm.
So then I know that what I want to use as reinforcement is not actually reinforcing the dog. So my rewards that I have are not actually functioning as reinforcers.
So in those early setups, you can even use reinforcement cues as a way to kind of gauge how the dog is feeling and where they are in their headspace. Because if they can't turn around and grab food off the ground, there's no way they're then going to be able to respond to a watch me or a let's go cue.
Correct. Yeah. And that's probably my favorite way to use them. Because when I started using these different cues, it was really for dog sports. It was for
Mhm.
me and for dog sports. And then as I started using them in pets, and with my clients who didn't need such precision that I need when I'm doing dog sports, but they still need complex and hard behaviors. Like living in the human world is still hard. It's just not so technical and precise,
Right.
but they're very useful as a barometer to know, where is your dog? Are they even capable of learning? And then the things that I have to offer in order to reward behavior or maintain behavior or build behavior, are they even meaningful? And so if they're not, then I can make a change. But if
Mhm.
I spend 15 minutes trying to work on, like, not barking at the fence and, oh, the dog won't eat and I'm sticking hot dogs in their face, I can use my time better.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of what you just described, what someone's normal response might be, trying to call their dog, trying to cue their dog, that can be quite harmful. We're
Yes.
repeating cues, we're becoming annoying and frustrating to our dogs. We're undoing a lot of the hard work that we've put in to try to build these behaviors in. And depending on how stressed or frustrated the human is getting, that can even then kind of put fuel on the fire, so to speak, for that dog that might already be having a lot of really big emotions.
Yeah, exactly. And we can poison our rewards, like the things that we
Mhm.
want to use as reinforcements. Um, we can do damage to them. So if I know that my dog, can't, I can bring them food and they can eat it, but they can't turn away and come get food off the ground. That's important information to me. And I'm certainly not going to continually cue my dog to come get food on the ground if they can't do it.
Right.
Right. I'm going to say, okay, I'm either going to change something or I'm going to, request a different behavior that the dog
Mhm.
can do and get them in the right headspace.
Yep, absolutely. Now we've got a video here of you kind of using these reinforcement cues to help a dog that is reactive, I believe. So I'll pop this up. Anything you want to preface this video with?
Um, we might, I might just have you like pause it in the middle. I don't know that it's the same clip that was in the post that I did on this, and it's just puppies reacting. So, and all of these puppies, they're all lovely, successful companions, but every single puppy has at the point of filming shown some kind of reactivity. And reactivity not as in aggression, but in, like, they're not reacting appropriately or they're overreacting to normal stuff in their environment. And that could be barking or lunging or pulling or not responding or growling. Um, so all these puppies are in situations where I'm using reinforcement cues basically as a barometer to check where they are. Can they eat food scattered on the ground? Can I do a toss? Can I interrupt the behavior?
Perfect. So if you need me to stop it while this is going on, just let me know and I will.
Okay.
Better.
So this is Samson, and he's a Cane Corso. And he is a little more worried about things,
Toss.
which is very typical of his breed. They're a serious breed, but he's also very friendly. He's a great family dog. But we're out in a store, and I like to use toss for him because it gets him moving, and movement helps him because he'll kind of get stuck staring and just stuck in one place.
Maybe. Uh-oh. Over here.
And here I'm asking for just a simple cue. Can you spin in a circle? And he gets stuck about halfway. And so I try again.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm holding the leash and the phone, but. And I help him finish that by rewarding him back at my hand. So it causes him to finish that turn.
Yeah,
And it's a simple cue.
There you go.
And this is my Akita puppy.
Yeah.
And we're just observing. We're in a parking lot, just letting, her set the pace. And if she checks back in with me, I feed her. And then she wants to move on. Okay, so this is one dog who, even as a very young puppy, when things were exciting, would not eat. So this is not a dog that you could like just take some really good food and stick in his face and manage him. So we had to teach him to respond to cues like come get food or chase food or sniff and eat food, so that we could use them actually as strategies, as rewards for building behavior.
Good.
Same thing with this little guy. This guy is so cute. Again, would not eat if there was anything exciting going on. So we taught him to eat with these reinforcement cues. You see, he can't respond to his name, but he can respond to toss because we spent time building that. And then he can respond to his name, and then I do another toss. Here we are. This is a super friendly dog. He loves people. He loves other dogs. And we're just, but he also has trouble eating, which is very common, very common. And so I'm just letting him watch. I'm watching his body language. And I'm going to use a toss to move him after he watches for too long.
So that's interesting that you brought up not wanting to eat due to excitement or stress, and how putting these behaviors of getting food in different manners on cue can actually help improve their ability to eat when out in public.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the same time that dogs are usually starting to show some reactivity. And again, I don't mean aggression. I just mean they're overreacting to their environment, or they're reacting in a way that isn't ideal for how we like to live. Their desire for eating is usually going down, right? So the little puppy that we can stick food in their face and lead them around by the nose and they ignore everything else, that's no longer the case. And now we have a dog who's really interested in the world. They want to go check things out. They're more independent. They have lost their follow instinct, so they don't really need to follow us around for no reason. And at the same time that's happening, they also care less about food.
Mhm.
So having those behaviors on cue lets us know, can we keep going? Is this can we train in this area? And then also it helps us get a dog who will eat. So we have actual strategies to change behavior. We're not just relying on the food or the ball or the inherent value of it. It's the whole pattern in the game that we're playing together.
Yeah. Now, obviously, like most things in training, sometimes there can be some human mechanics that need to be learned through this process. And there can be a little bit of a learning curve, both in the human's ability to remember all these different cues, to
Yes.
know when to use which cues and when, and even smooth mechanics of delivering the food in similar patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. So the upside is these can be great for clear communication. They can bring a lot of clarity to communicating if you use them well. So that the downside is the more cues you have, the more training you as the human have to do. Like you have to do more practice. But my pet owners who aren't trainers have been very successful learning 2 to 4. And you can do a lot with that. You can put your dog pretty much anywhere and you can check where they are mentally with 2 to 4 cues.
Mhm.
So, but yes,
Are
you do have to practice.
Yeah. Are there certain ones that you do find that are easier for people to pick up on and start using frequently over others?
Yeah, toss is by far like my go-to. I think initially when I started, I taught like deliver food or come get food. That seemed the most obvious to me. But surprisingly, although like I use come get food from my hand the most by far, I think that's the hardest for many dog owners and dogs to learn for a variety of reasons. But we can, once we teach toss, and once we teach scatter, usually then they've caught on because the pattern's the same. So that's the other lovely thing is, while it does take some practice, it's the same pattern for putting any cue on behavior,
Mhm.
or any behavior on cue. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understood what you were saying.
So you're
So
teaching a dog to respond to a verbal cue, which
yeah.
is a very valuable skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like with all things, the more practice we get using them, the easier it will be for people. So if you start off teaching it and you think, oh my gosh, this is really complicated, can't I just give food to my dog every time? Just remember those mechanics do start to become muscle memory. It does get easier for you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, talk to us a little bit about your upcoming presentation. This is a topic you're going to be diving in deeper on at Puppy Summit, which obviously would help more than just our puppies. It would help our adult dogs and adult dog owners as well. So, talk to us about what will be in that presentation and kind of some of the stuff you plan on diving into.
So I'm going to go into more of the cues and kind of how to choose and where to focus your attention. And if you're like, I can only handle one, like what should you choose? Um, and why I like to focus on these first. I with all of my clients now, I teach them this on the first day, and this is the first thing we focus on moving forward because this is our foundation of everything that we do. And you can do so much and solve so many problems with just these that you don't need a lot of other things
Hmm.
necessarily. It's great to have them, but you can get through a lot of situations with these. So I will talk about what some options are and why you might choose or not choose to use them. And then I'll teach you basically the pattern for how to teach them.
Awesome. And that will be one of many presentations at Puppy Summit, like we talked about.
Yes.
You also offer coaching for clients. So I know that I've included a link to your business, but do you want to kind of let people know where they might be able to find you and follow your information?
Yes. I'm on Facebook mostly. I am on Instagram as well, but I can kind of only keep up with one social media very well. So I'm mostly on Facebook. But the best way to reach me if you want more information on training or coaching is through my website. Everything kind of funnels through there. And then if you want to follow me on Facebook, that's where I will post like little training videos or client stuff as well.
Perfect. Well, any last minute tips for anybody or thoughts on kind of using reinforcement cues or how to use them to reinforce certain behaviors or fix problems?
So if you've ever been in a situation where you thought like, oh, positive reinforcement doesn't work, or food doesn't work, or um, toys don't work, then I would check this out because this is the way to teach your dog to use these things in order to get what they want. And that's the building block for all behavior.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nina, so much for joining us tonight. And I am really looking forward to your presentation at Puppy Summit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun.